I stood at the mirror in the little bathroom of my new country cottage, dabbing away tears that had carved worn tracks down my weathered cheeks. 69 years behind me, 45 of them spent as a wife and the last two learning how to be a widow, and at last, I'd done something that belonged only to me. This neat, modest house with its young garden and wide windows, catching the sweep of the fields, wasn't leased or borrowed or shared. It was mine, entirely mine. I had scraped together every $5,000 in total, saved one coin at a time by saying no to tiny comforts for decades. It sounded small to other people, but to me it was everything. The reward for a lifetime of careful hands and quiet sacrifices. I laid my palm on the fresh cream paint, breathed in the scent of new lumber and clean plaster, and felt a sensation I hadn't recognized in years. Unfiltered, uncomplicated freedom. That morning, I'd taken my coffee at the small kitchen table while the birds stitched melodies through the trees. I watered the cheerful little plants I brought home from town and imagined where my old rocking chair would sit best to catch the afternoon sun. Everything was simple. Everything was mine. I was sorting my few dresses into the closet of the main bedroom when my phone lit up with Rebecca's name. My heart tugged. Maybe she'd call to congratulate me, even though she'd made her disapproval plain. "It's a bad investment, Mom," she'd repeated. "You should stay in your apartment, close to us." Not with me close to us like a tool tucked in a nearby drawer. Useful whenever someone needed it. Double quotes, "Hello, sweetheart," I answered, letting that stubborn mother gladness lift my voice the way it always had, no matter how many times hope had been bruised. "Mom, get ready," she said without so much as a greeting. "We'll be there in an hour with 20 of David's relatives. Make food for everyone and get the room set up. We're only staying 2 weeks." The air thinned. The floor might as well have slid beneath me. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. 20 people, Rebecca? I just arrived. I don't have anything prepared. There isn't even food in the house. Oh, don't be dramatic. They're family now. You should welcome them. David's cousin Emily is bringing 4 little ones, and his brother Noah is coming with his wife and twins. Aunt Carol and Aunt Beth are on their way with their families, too. It's vacation time, and they need a free place to stay. Your house is perfect. She didn't slow down long enough for me to breathe. Make sure there are clean towels for everyone. The kids want to swim in the lake, so pack snacks for the drive back. See you soon. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand trembling, while the joy I'd been cradling evaporated like breath against glass. 20 people. No warning, no request. Just an announcement as if my house had become a no-cost resort. I looked around my small 2-bedroom, 1-bath refuge. Where would they sleep? On the floor? In my tiny living room with its little sofa? My refrigerator was nearly bare eggs, a bit of milk, 2 tomatoes from the market. How do you feed 20 mouths with that? With what money could I keep 20 people for 2 weeks? But it wasn't the logistics that stung most. It was the same old wound opening again. My voice didn't count. My daughter had decided for me again. She had assigned my space, my time, and my bank account the way a supervisor assigns shifts, and I, her mother, not her employee, was expected to obey. I sat on the edge of the bed I'd chosen with care, picturing the quiet mornings I'd planned here with a book and a blanket, and felt the hollow I'd known too well in my old apartment. There they would descend without warning, empty the fridge, run the laundry, sprawl in front of the TV, and leave behind crumbs and criticism. The day after my husband's funeral, when I could barely stand upright, Rebecca had arrived with boxes and a bright, brittle smile. "You have too much stuff, Mom," she'd said, packing my husband's books without asking, tucking away pieces of our life, including the gold watch his father had worn as if I were a storage unit. And when I sold the apartment to buy this house, she insisted I hand over the money for her to invest properly. When I refused, she gave me a month of silence like a punishment. Now, on the first day in my own home, she was already staking a claim. Tears wavered again as I looked out at the little square of earth I dreamed of tending. In an hour, peace would become noise. Freedom would become orders. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my years, and opened the fridge: 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, 2 tomatoes, a wedge of cheese, a bottle of water. The pantry offered a can of beans, one of tuna, a half bag of rice, salt, pepper, oil. I hadn't even bought many dishes, just a set of 4, more than I'd need for a life lived quietly. 50 minutes. That was the countdown on the kitchen clock. I grabbed my purse and keys, then opened my wallet and felt my stomach drop. After closing on the house, buying basic furniture, and paying the movers, I had $300 to stretch to next month. I drove to town with the urgency of someone trying to outrun a storm. In the tiny market, I moved down the aisles with a mental calculator humming: rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, the cheapest vegetables, some bread. Bulk over beauty, stretch over taste. The register chimed at $240, nearly everything I had left. When I got back, only 20 minutes remained. I boiled water, opened cans, chopped vegetables through a blur of tears that had more to do with grief than onions. As I stirred, memories lined up, babysitting whenever asked, lending money I couldn't spare, loaning my car when theirs was in the shop, cooking for David and his buddies all weekend because his own mother was out of town. "You cook so well," he'd said, smiling like it was a compliment and not an assignment. There had been the week I canceled my own doctor's appointments to keep an eye on a sister-in-law's children for free. "Don't be dramatic," Rebecca had told me then. "It's good for you to have something to do." The crunch of tires on gravel snapped me back. 3 vehicles spilled people as if unclasping overstuffed suitcases, babies crying, kids cheering, adults laughing with the relief of people arriving where the work is already done. Rebecca stood at the center of it all, directing traffic like it was her estate. "Mom," she called, "come help with the bags." I set the spoon down and felt something inside me give, not loud or showy, but final. The tiny thread that has carried too much weight at last slipping free. I opened the front door. They came forward beaming, taking in the view like patrons arriving at their favorite rental. "Aunt Mary," Emily called over the squeal of her baby. "What a lovely place. I hope you made plenty, we're starving." Noah clapped my shoulder as if we'd known each other for years. "Perfect spot for a holiday, Mom. Is lunch ready?" The kids didn't eat yet. Rebecca appeared beside me with a smile that never warmed her eyes. "I hope you set up the rooms. Emily and her family need the master. They'll be up all night with the baby. We'll take the other bedroom. The rest can use the living room. My bedroom, the one I just made up with fresh sheets and soft light." They hadn't asked. They had decided. I pictured myself folded onto the tiny sofa in my own house while strangers sprawled across my bed, and the spark that had snapped inside me flared a little brighter. "Mom, the food?" Rebecca called from the doorway, her tone edged with impatience, the voice you use for a slow waiter. Back in the kitchen, I plated what I could. The rice had caught a bit at the bottom. The pasta was edging toward mush. The sauce was thinner than I would have liked. Still, I ladled hope and apology onto plates until the plates ran out at 8. Then I filled cups and bowls, and for one small child, the lid of a pot that Noah frowned at his portion. "Is this all?" I figured there'd be chicken at least. "I didn't have time." "It's fine," David cut in with a magnanimous sigh. "We know you weren't expecting us, but you could have tried harder. We're family. And look at this place, it's lovely. You must have savings." "Savings." If only they knew I'd nearly emptied what remained on this very meal. Grandma, one of Noah's twins, asked, "Do you have video games like at my other grandparents' house?" "No, darling," I said softly. "Not yet. What about cable? Wi-Fi?" His little face fell when I shook my head. "Then what are we going to do for 2 weeks?" "This is boring." Emily, changing her baby's diaper on my dining table, handed me a list scrawled on a napkin. "We'll need diapers, formula, baby food, sunscreen, bug spray, shampoo for the kids, detergent, painkillers, antacids, oh, and could you grab feminine pads?" I didn't pack enough. I looked at the list and saw the last $200 left in my wallet dissolve. "Emily, oh, Mary," she laughed lightly. "They're basics. It won't ruin you. Besides, it's for family." Paul wandered in with a beer from his cooler. "We'll need space in your fridge," he said, already moving my groceries aside. "And where do Robert and I sleep?" "No worries. If it's the living room, just make sure there are plenty of blankets." "It gets cold." "Blankets for 20. I own 3. Pillows for 20. I had 4. Out the window, children trampled the tiny tomato plants I tucked into the soil that morning. "Careful, please," I called. "They're kids," Noah shouted back. "Let them run. That's why we came to the country." Rebecca slid beside me at the sink while I washed the first wave of dishes. "Mom," she said briskly, "I need to talk to you. David's family wants to feel welcomed. You could try a little harder. The food was plain and the house feels cold. You don't want them to think you don't want us here. Try harder." I repeated, "This is a chance to bond. And I hope you're not planning to charge anyone. That would be petty." "Charge them." The thought hadn't even grazed my mind. But as she said it, something shifted. The spark inside me didn't die out this time. It caught. That night, 20 people slept comfortably. I lay on the too short sofa, staring into the dark while snores rose and fell around me like waves against a cliff. When had I surrendered the helm of my own life? The answer drifted in like dawn, not all at once, but in 1,000 small surrenders. Every yes that should have been no. Every time I let someone else's convenience cost me my peace, and yet there in the quiet, a stronger truth surfaced. It wasn't too late to steer back. I woke at 5 with my back aching, the house already trembling with early chaos. The baby cried. His cry triggered the toddlers. The toddlers roused the older kids. Footsteps rattled down the hall. I shuffled to the kitchen, hoping for the solace of coffee, and found Noah rooting through my fridge. "Morning, Mary," he said, not looking up. "Where's the coffee?" "And the cereal for the kids?" "I don't have cereal," I said, keeping my voice even. "What do you mean you don't have cereal?" "What are they supposed to eat?" "I can scramble eggs," I offered, knowing there were exactly 6 left. He laughed. 6 eggs for 20? We'll have to go get real food. Make a list. The kids can't wait long." Emily appeared with a sack of soiled baby clothes. "I need hot water for the bottle, and these need washing." "You didn't pack enough?" I didn't expect he'd go through so much. "You have a washer. It's easier here." One by one, the kids drifted in, hungry and hopeful, and my heart pinched for them, not for the adults who treated me like a service counter. Robert wandered in, yawning. "You've got proper coffee, not that instant stuff, right?" "Only instant." He sighed. "Then add good coffee to the list. And since we're going, charcoal for a cookout?" Rebecca came downstairs from my bed looking rested and beautiful. "Morning, Mom. Is breakfast ready?" "David hates waiting." "Let's be organized today, make a thorough list, and go to town. We'll hold the fort." "Mother-in-law," David called cheerfully. "Grab cigarettes and beer, too. Any brand is fine." Paul poked his head in. Robert and I were thinking we should do a big family barbecue this weekend. Invite more relatives. Nothing too fancy, just enough meat for 30. 30. I did the math in my head and felt my last dollars evaporate. The children had found the box of crackers and were shoveling them into their mouths, crumbs snowing onto the floor. Sweethearts, not those, I said, more sharply than I meant to. They're just crackers, Rebecca scolded. The kids are hungry and you haven't made breakfast. Don't be selfish, Mom. This is a beautiful chance for family time, and you're focused on money and little things. Something inside me aligned quiet as a puzzle piece finally found. These people didn't love me. They relied on me. And I had mistaken reliance for affection for far too long. All right, I said, surprising even myself with the calm in my voice. I'll go to town and get what's needed. Satisfied smiles bloomed around the kitchen. They thought the day would proceed as usual. I would spend, cook, clean, and apologize. I took my purse and keys and walked out into the morning, but I didn't turn toward the market. I drove to a tiny cafe I'd noticed yesterday and ordered one good cup of coffee I didn't have to gulp between demands. The waitress, a kind-eyed woman, studied my face. Family trouble? She asked gently. You could say that. Funny thing about family, she murmured. The ones closest can do the deepest cutting. Her words landed like truth set to quiet music. When my cup was empty, I crossed the street to a small office with a plain sign. Jeremy Stone, attorney at law. He listened while I laid out the last 48 hours, the invasion. The pressure, the expenses I couldn't afford. The way my no never counted. He took notes, then folded his hands. Mrs. Albright, what you're describing is financial and emotional abuse. Family ties don't erase property rights or consent. This is your home. You control access and terms. Terms? I repeated, the word both strange and sturdy on my tongue. If people are using your property as lodging, you can set commercial rates. If anyone refuses to leave when asked, that's trespassing. You're allowed to draw lines. I left with a folder, a simple letter establishing room, meal, and utility rates. A summary of my rights as the homeowner. Steps to take if boundaries were ignored. At the bank, a young manager walked me through my account. In 2 days, I'd spent $520. $300 remained to last the month. He showed me how to lock down larger withdrawals. It happens more than you'd think, he said softly. Protect yourself. At the market, I spent exactly $50 on real basics. No luxuries, no party supplies, no beer, no cigarettes. When I finally returned, I met a room full of expectant faces. Where's the meat? Paul asked, and the beer? David added, cigarettes? Robert chimed in. I brought Staples rice, beans, pasta, I said evenly. Enough so no one goes hungry. What about everything we asked for? Emily demanded. I didn't buy it, I said. Silence fell, the kind that thickens the air. You have savings, Rebecca insisted. Don't be stingy. I took out my bank printouts. In 2 days, I've spent $520. I have less than $300 left for the month. I let the papers travel from hand to hand. Faces soured, then we'll all chip in, David announced like a benevolent king. We can contribute to expenses? Wonderful, I said, sliding out the second folder. Here are the commercial rates for lodging and meals at this property. The silence turned from stunned to wary. It's $100 per room per night, $50 per person per day for meals, and $20 per person per day for utilities and laundry. So far, that's $2,800. You're charging us? Rebecca shrilled. I'm offering options, I replied, steady as a fence post. Pay for what you use, choose a smaller package, or find other accommodations. Voices erupted at once, shame, shock, anger, and all the old tricks polished to a shine. This time, their words slid off an invisible wall I hadn't had yesterday. This is outrageous, David barked. We're family. Your father would be ashamed, Rebecca sniffed. Your father, I said quietly, spent his life making sure I wouldn't be taken advantage of. He wouldn't want me living as the maid in my own home. Emily blinked rapidly. We just wanted time together. Time together, I said gently. Doesn't look like handing me a bill I can't afford. Noah tried a different angle. Maybe you need help, Mary. This isn't you. You're right, I said. It isn't the old me. The room was strung tight when a knock at the open door broke the tension. A woman in her 60s stepped in with a basket of vegetables and a kind smile. I'm Martha from next door, she said. Welcome to the neighborhood. Her eyes moved from face to face, reading the air in an instant. That's a crowd. I'm sure everyone's contributing to costs with a group this big. The silence that followed told the whole story. And my day, Martha went on mildly. Family brought groceries and helped with the bills, especially when there were so many of us. She flashed me a look I understood. You're not crazy. You're brave. I made coffee for her in the kitchen, and she leaned closer. Honey, real family helps. These look like people who take. Set your lines. You'll be surprised how quickly respect follows. We returned to the living room. There were whispers, some quick math, a huddle. We can give you $200 total for the whole stay. Rebecca declared at last, triumphant. Martha nearly dropped her cup. I simply nodded, as if considering. All right, I'll accept on a contract. A contract? Noah frowned. Since you're purchasing services, it protects everyone. For $200, you get floor space in the living room, one simple meal a day, rice and beans, and scheduled bathroom access. Anything more falls under the standard package at $2,800, David exploded. We're not signing that. You don't have to, I said, calm as a lake at dawn. You can pay the full package, the basic package, or you can find someplace else. Martha set down her cup with a soft clap. Clear options. Fair terms. That's how grown-ups do it. Rebecca bristled. This is a family matter. It surely is, Martha said, standing. And a good family doesn't treat its elders like free staff. She touched my arm. You know where I am if you need anything? The door closed behind her and the room simmered. New tactics surfaced, guilt from Paul, bluster from Robert, tears from Emily. I answered each with the same steady truth. This is my home. These are my terms, Dot, and for the first time in years, I felt the floor hold. Paul tried one more angle, softening his voice until it almost sounded kind. Mary, your husband and I were like brothers. He wouldn't want this rift. Think how it'll look when people hear you charged family. My husband taught me to stand straight, I said, not raising my voice. He taught me that love isn't proven by how much you can take from someone, but by how well you protect them. I won't dishonor his lessons to keep anyone comfortable. Robert squared his shoulders. There are a lot of us. You're alone. Maybe rethink the tone. Once, that would have rattled me. Today only clarified things. Are you threatening me in my own home? I asked. He blinked, then mumbled something about being realistic. The reality, I said, is that you arrived uninvited, expected free lodging and service, and became angry when asked to contribute. The reality is that I've given you 3 options and all of them are fair. Emily began to cry then, dramatic and noisy. How can you be so cold? My baby needs stability. You're putting us on the street. Your child needs parents who plan within their means, I replied gently, not grandparents who are expected to fund vacations. Small feet pounded in from the yard. Grandma, why is everybody yelling? One of the twins asked. The innocence in his face softened something in me even as it hardened my resolve. The grown-ups are sorting out grown-up things, I told him. There's rice and beans in the kitchen. Ask your dad to help you make some. You're not cooking? Noah asked, astonished. I cooked yesterday and the day before, I said. Today parents cook, or you take the kids into town. David snapped. That's it. Pack up, Rebecca. We're leaving. Leave and go where? She blurted. We don't have reservations. Anywhere else, he said, grabbing a suitcase. I won't be extorted. I watched the room spring into motion zippers, shouted instructions, the rustle of plastic bags, and the scrape of coolers. The children were quiet in that watchful way kids get when they understand, without words, that something important is happening. Sadness rose like a tide in me and then receded. Underneath it lay bedrock, steadiness, relief. Rebecca turned when they were nearly done. This isn't you, she said, the old command threaded through her voice. You'll regret choosing money over family. I didn't choose money, I answered. I chose boundaries. I chose respect. When you're ready to visit as guests, you'll be welcome. When you're ready to contribute like adults, you'll be welcomed gladly. She opened her mouth, closed it, and stormed out. One by one, they filed toward the cars. The engine started, the gravel shifted, and then the caravan pulled away. Dust lifting behind them like a curtain falling. Silence unfurled in the yard. No shouted orders. No crying baby. No feet thundering down my hallway. Only a bird calling from the maple and the faint tick of my kitchen clock. I stood on the porch, letting the quiet seep into me until my shoulders finally lowered from around my ears. That evening, Martha knocked with a covered pot and 2 bowls. Chicken stew, she said, lifting the lid. Enough for seconds. We ate at the little table on the porch with the fields going gold in the distance. Do you feel all right? She asked after a while. I feel exactly right, I said. Shaken a bit, but right. Martha nodded. That's how it feels when a spine grows back in a place you kept bending. We planted tomatoes and zinnias, beans along the fence, a row of lavender by the step. When she left, she squeezed my hand. If they return with respect, open the door. If they return with demands, lock it. Simple as that. I slept in my own bed that night, the cotton sheets cool against my skin, the room carrying the soft, clean smell of paint and promise. I didn't dream. I didn't need to. The next weeks were quiet in a way that felt medicinal. I put a chair exactly where the light washed the floor in the afternoons and read whole chapters without checking the clock. I learned which birds came at dawn and which flowers drank more water than their neighbors. I fixed the small things no one else would have noticed. A sticky latch, a tilted shelf, a faucet with a stubborn drip. Martha introduced me to the woman who ran the community center, and I signed up for a painting class on Tuesday mornings. My first work was a wobbly bowl of pears that looked more like lopsided stones. I loved it. From Rebecca, there were 3 calls in the first month, each shaped like a favor with a shadow of threat behind it. Money to hold them over. Could I keep the kids for a week so she could reset? Could she borrow the car because it's just sitting in the country anyway? I answered kindly without apology. I'm not able to do that, I said each time. I hope you find a solution. She tried the old staircase anger, pleading, blame. When none of those steps led to the door opening, she simply hung up. The silence after those calls wasn't empty. It was sturdy, like a room that had been put back in order dot at the bank. I set spending notifications and a limit that required in-person confirmation for larger withdrawals. The manager printed new statements and slid them across the desk, smiling. You're doing exactly what you should. At the attorney's office, I left a signed copy of my lodging terms and asked him to email me a version I could keep on my phone. You may never need it, Jeremy said, but having it will make you stand taller. On Thursdays, Martha and I traded cuttings. She gave me a start of her peonies. I offered basil and a bit of rosemary. We took to eating supper on my porch. passing between us a small collection of favorite dishes, her stew, my simple rice with pigeon peas, the salad we built from whatever the garden had to give that day. 6 weeks in, I realized something had shifted that had nothing to do with my family. I was no longer afraid of the phone. It could ring or not. The sound no longer carried debt. One afternoon, as I painted a line of lavender that insisted on becoming a purple smudge, Martha said, "You know the thing about boundaries? They teach you how to see. Before, you saw your daughter's need and your obligation. Now you see your life." My life, I repeated. The words felt new and perfectly fitted. I started taking short drives after dinner, the kind where you turn down a road because it looks pretty and trust you'll find your way back. I learned where the creek bent and where the deer stepped out, evening after evening, like actors hitting their mark. I noticed that the sky in this part of the world didn't just go dark. It layered itself in colors for the patient. I wrote a list and taped it inside the pantry door. Things I'm allowed to have: a restful bed, quiet mornings, shelves with only what I use, a kitchen without panic, friends who knock instead of burst in, a phone I can answer or not, a garden that needs a gentle hand instead of repair after small storms named other people. There were days when guilt still crept close, soft-footed and familiar. I would hear a line in my head: "You're selfish. You forgot your family," and I would set down the spoon or the brush or the trowel, breathe, and answer that voice the way I wish someone had taught me long ago. I'm not selfish for caring for myself. I'm responsible. Then I would do one small kind thing for myself: immediately make tea, step outside and stand barefoot in the grass, pick a single flower and put it in a jar by the sink. It's remarkable how dignity, once reclaimed, insists on being watered like any other living thing. 6 months later, the house no longer felt like a place I was learning. It felt like a place that knew me. The garden had a personality, now bossy in July, sleepy by late September, and the porch had become the best seat in the world for sunsets that took their time. My Tuesdays were for paint, my Thursdays for supper with Martha, and my Sundays for quiet that didn't ache. Rebecca called less often. When she did, the shape of the calls had changed. Information, not demands. News, not invoices. Once she began, "Mom, can I ask?" then stopped and started again. "How are you?" It was small, but it was new. I told her about the lavender and the painting with pears that still refused to look like pears. She laughed, and for 15 minutes we were simply a mother and daughter with a phone between them and nothing heavy to carry. When she slipped back into old grooves, I didn't slide with her. "I'm not able to," I would say, and leave the silence alone. Sometimes she filled it with understanding. Sometimes she hung up. I survived both. Now, and then I thought about that first day. The phone in my hand, the clock racing, the way my heart had slammed at the word 20. It felt like watching an old film of someone I recognized and wanted to hug. I had been good to others for so long that I'd forgotten how to be good to myself. The forgetting had been slow. The remembering, once it started, was swift. This morning, I woke to birds combing song through the maples. I brewed coffee in a quiet kitchen and carried it to the porch. The basil had gone a little wild. The zinnias were bright as candy. I watered the pots while the air was still cool, then sat down and watched the steam rise from my mug in delicate threads. I have learned that love without boundaries is not kindness. It's an invitation for the unkind to move in. I have learned that generosity without wisdom is a hole you can pour your life into. I have learned that family is the people who meet you in the middle instead of moving into your side of the line. Most of all, I have learned that it is never too late to choose yourself. If this story put a little strength back in your spine, I'm grateful. If you'd like to hear more, you're welcome to stay. There are plenty more tales where this came from. And I'd love to know, what would you have done in my place? Tell me where you're listening from and what you think. I read every word. If you want more stories of ordinary people finding their way home to themselves, tap like, hit subscribe, and drop your thoughts below. Your kindness helps me keep writing. For now, I'll be out by the tomatoes, pinching back the little shoots so the fruit grows strong. The garden taught me that, if you don't set limits, nothing thrives. As the days rolled into seasons, I realized how easily peace becomes a habit once you stop apologizing for it. I woke when the sun touched the curtains instead of when someone called my name. I cooked when I was hungry, not when others were waiting. The quiet no longer frightened me, it fed me. One afternoon, Martha and I sat under the oak tree by the fence, shelling peas into a bowl between us. You know, she said, you've got a glow now. Mary, the first time I met you, you looked like someone carrying everyone else's luggage. Now you look like you finally set it down. I laughed softly. It's funny. I thought letting go would feel like loss, but it feels like breathing. That's how freedom works, she said. It doesn't shout. It exhales. Later that evening, I found an old photo tucked between the pages of a book. I'd unpacked months ago a picture of my husband and me in front of our first home. He had that same quiet pride I had felt the day I bought this cottage. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice. You've done well, Mary. You finally built a life that belongs to you. I placed the picture on my bedside table. It felt right to keep it there, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but of what I had reclaimed. When people in town learned bits and pieces of my story, they didn't look at me with pity. They looked at me with respect. Older women started stopping by for coffee, asking how I found the courage to say no after a lifetime of yes. I always gave the same answer. Courage doesn't come first. Peace comes first. You get so tired of chaos that you finally choose quiet, even if quiet means standing alone. By the end of that year, I had hosted my first proper dinner in the house on my terms. Just 4 guests, Martha, her husband, and 2 kind souls from the art class. We ate on mismatched plates, candles flickering in jars. There was laughter but no noise, conversation but no criticism, warmth but no weight. That's when I knew the house had shifted from shelter to home. A few weeks later, Rebecca called again. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. Mom, can I come visit? Just me this time. I think I owe you an apology. I hesitated only a heartbeat before answering. Of course, sweetheart. You can come, but just for the weekend. When she arrived, she looked older not in years, but in spirit. She carried a single bag and a bouquet of daisies. We spent the first day walking through the garden, the silence between us finally gentle instead of sharp. That evening, as the sky burned itself into pinks and oranges, she said quietly, I didn't realize how much I took from you. You never said no, so I thought you were fine. I wasn't, I said honestly, but I'm learning to be. She nodded, her eyes wet. I don't blame you for doing what you did. I think I would have broken if I were you. You don't break from kindness, I told her. You break from never having it returned. We didn't fix everything that weekend. Life isn't that tidy. But when she left, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. It wasn't forgiveness I felt then, it was balance. For months afterward, our relationship stayed cautious but civil. There were boundaries, and for the first time, she respected them. We both learned to meet halfway instead of one person doing all the walking. Now, when I look back at that frantic day, the call, the panic, the crowd of faces claiming space that wasn't theirs, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel gratitude. That day broke the shell I'd been living in. It pushed me to draw a line in chalk that became a wall of strength. Sometimes the best way to protect your love is to protect your peace. I still keep the letter from the lawyer in a drawer. though I've never needed it again. It's my reminder that boundaries aren't barriers. They're gates. They open for those who knock and close for those who barge in. Every morning, I begin with 3 small rituals: brew a fresh pot of coffee, step outside to water the plants, whisper a quiet thank you for this second chapter of my life, and every evening, I end with one promise: never again will I confuse being needed with being loved. So, if my story found its way to your screen today, maybe it's because you, too, are carrying the weight of saying yes too often. If so, I hope you take this as your sign it's not too late to choose yourself. It's not selfish to want peace. It's sacred. If this story spoke to you, give it a like, share it with someone who needs strength, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. There are many more stories waiting to remind you that even the quietest heart can roar when it finally learns to say, enough. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And above all, thank you for believing that it's never too late to be free.